Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. We are going to take up for discussion the recently held moot of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization of the Council of Foreign Ministers. And Pakistan was, of course, represented by Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Mohammad Ishaq Dar, in which he reaffirmed Pakistan's commitment towards regional stability, multilateral cooperation, and peaceful resolution of all the disputes and issues. Ishaq Dar has also emphasized Shanghai Cooperation Organization's role as a stabilizing force in the world facing profound geopolitical challenges. At the same time, he has also criticized the reckless disregard for international norms of Israel and its brutality in occupied Palestinian territories, particularly vis-a-vis Gaza. He's also denounced recent attacks on Iran by Israel. Also, he has expressed concern regarding the recent escalation in the regional tensions post-Pahalgam because of India's aggression. He has stressed that disputes must be resolved through dialogue, not coercion, and called for structured talks to address the standing issues. He has also said, let me quote, Pakistan remains committed to ceasefire agreements and regional stability, but we cannot accept the normalization of arbitrary force, unquote. Mr. Ishaq Dar has also advocated the institutional reforms at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. He has also highlighted the need for economic collaboration, proposing greater use of national currencies to mitigate global financial shocks, and backing the creation of an alternative development funding mechanism. He has also underscored China-Pakistan economic corridor being vital for regional connectivity and shared prosperity. He has also urged for renewed engagement with Afghanistan through the contact group on Afghanistan of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and emphasized a unified response towards counter-terrorism. He has also reaffirmed Pakistan's dedication to the Shanghai spirit of mutual trust and cooperation, urging member states to pursue a future defined not by confrontation but by collaboration. We've also seen the foreign ministers of the Shanghai Cooperation also had a joint call with Chinese President Mr. Xi Jinping, in which Chinese President Xi Jinping noted that over the past 24 years since its founding, the SCO has always upheld the Shanghai spirit, grown into a mature and robust organization, and demonstrated strong vitality. With the SCO summit set to take this year in China's Tianjin, he expressed his hope to meet the leaders of other member states at an event to discuss future development of the SCO. President Xi Jinping has also called on the SCO to take the trust and mutual benefit as the foundation of cooperation, equality and consultation as the way of engagement, respect for diverse civilizations as a means to promote harmony and inclusiveness, and common development as a path towards shared prosperity, to ensure that the Shanghai spirit continues to light the way in building an SCO community with the shared future. President Xi Jinping also called for joint efforts to firmly oppose hegemony and also power politics and bullying in order to promote a more equal and balanced multipolar world. This important development up for discussion. For that, we are honored to be joined in the studio by Dr. Nabeel Hussain. He's the expert in international relations. Dr. Hussain, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to be joined by Dr. Salma Malik, foreign affairs expert. Dr. Salma, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Dr. Hussain, now, firstly, trying to understand the significance of this particular moot. Pakistan was the host in one of the recently held high-level moot here, the Council of the Heads of the Government, most recently at the end of the last year. Now, Pakistan's commitment to multilateralism, as well as when we talk about the Shanghai spirit, your understanding regarding that as to what this Shanghai spirit is and what is that particular vision of President Xi Jinping regarding as to this community with a shared future under this Shanghai spirit, and where does that position of Pakistan we can understand to be when its commitment to multilateralism is concerned?
Well, thank you so much for being me on the show. Well, I would like to talk about this Shanghai spirit. That the spirit is basically revolving around the concept of cooperation. So, for example, if we see the Shanghai Cooperation Organization or any other multilateral forum or any other regional organization, so they are mostly based on this spirit of cooperation. Let me take you back to the history. For example, in 1953, that there was the first time this European coal and steel community, and that started, and after that, it turned out into the biggest European Union, the most important integration and the regional cooperating organization. And in the contemporary time, what we see that, as you mentioned, that there are multipolar world that is emerging with the passage of time, and China being the next superpower in the world. So China has this policy of introducing this soft power, and China has this policy of having this more cultural integration and economic integration. And as the foreign minister has mentioned about the flagship project of CPAC, which is basically the flagship and the lifeline of Belt and Road Initiative. So keeping in view this thing, that most of the time what we see starting from 1948 even up till now, Pakistan has rested more and more on peace and cooperation. Let me take you back to the time of 1998, that before the nuclear test, Pakistan also proposed a strategic restraint regime and nuclear weapon free zone, and we were much more concerned about having a cooperative South Asia. But instead of this, what we see that that India was more inclined towards developing nuclear weapon, and they were more inclined of having this arms race in South Asia. Now coming to this recent point, what the recent joint statement, the Foreign Minister Jaishankar has declined to have a joint statement at the SCO forum. So what it signifies basically is that in this particular region, Pakistan and China, they basically are trying to have more cooperative and more cohesive and most peaceful region. But what we see that due to this idiosyncratic nature of the Indian government and BJP government, they are not inclined towards having regional stability and to having regional cooperation. To me, what the spirit of this Shanghai cooperation or this Shanghai spirit is basically, it is mostly based on peace, it is mostly based on economic cooperation, economic cohesion. So in the contemporary time, what we see that it's not only about wars, rather the contemporary time is more about having economic cooperation and more having peaceful and cultural integration. And Shanghai Cooperation Organization is one of the most significant path where we can have cultural and peaceful cooperation with the Central Asian states as well. And Pakistan being the geostrategic, most important geostrategic location, is having very easily access to Central Asia as well. And we need to work more on the Wakhan corridor as well to have the economic cooperation.
Right. We are honored to be joined by another participant on the video link. Mr. Aizaz Ahmad Chaudhry is former Foreign Secretary of Pakistan. Mr. Chaudhry, thank you very much for your time, for being on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Looking at this particular moot and the kind of address we have seen, the very important statements made by Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Ishaq Dar, reaffirming Pakistan's commitment towards the Shanghai Cooperation Organization for regional stability, multilateral cooperation and peaceful resolution of disputes. So when it comes to Pakistan's commitment towards multilateralism, what is that idea, that vision, when we specifically talk about Pakistan's commitment towards this particular phenomenon, and how does it actually add to Pakistan's efforts and endeavors contributing towards regional stability?
You see, the world, as we all know, is going through a state of flux, and the rule-based world order is not really holding itself. And we also see major powers asserting their power arbitrarily, lateral uh, use of force or assertiveness. Now, in such times, most countries are looking towards minilateralism or to like-minded organizations. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization was one such organization which was expected to deliver peace and stability for its member states. It is unfortunate that India has, as you can see, diluted its effectiveness. But that should not deter Pakistan from continuing on the path of making regional or extra regional alliances, not alliances exactly, but sort of coalitions in order to protect its interests. Had the United Nations system worked intact, had the UN Security Council's resolutions been implemented, of course, there was no need for going towards these kind of organizations. But now that the situation is, as I indicated, uh, that of disorder in the world affairs, and therefore there's a growing reliance of every country, including Pakistan, on forming such coalitions. And that's the approach Pakistan has taken. Pakistan does not believe in unilateralism or unilateral use of force. Pakistan believes in international law. Pakistan believes in international human rights laws, international humanitarian laws. And I think that's the right direction. As a civilized nation, as a responsible nation state, I think that's what we should be doing. Even if we see now many major powers and even other powers uh, blatantly violating international law. We have seen it happen in Gaza, where Israel is, as you can see, trampling over every possible international law and creating a situation of genocide and crimes against humanity. Here in our own neighborhood, India hasn't behaved differently. It has also violated all kinds of laws that were in, and norms that were enshrined in the UN Charter to respect sovereignty and territorial integrity of other states. So I believe that Pakistan, in such turbulent times, had stood by positive forces or which want to strengthen multilateralism, which want to strengthen international law, and has not joined the bandwagon of those states which want to really violate or go against international law with impunity.
Right, Mr. Chaudhry, what about India's standing? India being the member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, as you have already mentioned, India has also committed the blatant use of unilateral force, and most recently we have seen and the kind of aggression it resorted to, breaking that all international, interstate norms and traditions. So, what sort of impact such a country being the member of such a vibrant regional organization is having at the moment as we speak, and what could be the possible ramifications of that in future?
I think India is trying to figure out where does it really stand. On the one hand, it wanted to have close relations with the United States, and it indeed had in the last 2 decades, benefited from the economic and military assistance, more military assistance than economic, of the United States of America. And it has built up a formidable uh, military prowess thanks to its partnership with the US. But at the same time, it also wanted to have relations with China, with Russia, and also wanted to trade with China. So America's got some mixed signals from Indians, uh, whether they are running with the hare and hunting with the hound. So that's one aspect of what the confusion that befogs India's foreign policy at this time. The second aspect is that India was of late trying to project itself as a leader of the global south. Now, we have seen that it has not really stood with the developing countries. Even on Israeli aggression against Gaza, it was really with Israel, not with the oppressed people of Palestine. And likewise, in other areas, we can see that India is, to give you another example, is BRICS organization, where China and Russia were trying to find alternatives to US dollar, for example, and we saw India drag its feet on that because it wanted to stay on in partnership with the US. So when you when you take such positions, then the global south is not going to take you as their leader, because they think that you want our leadership only because you want to project your own status. On the contrary, China, which has been engaged with a large number of countries through its Belt and Road Initiative, and these countries feel that maybe China is a better partner, better leader of global south, because it is continuing to provide us with economic empowerment. So, under these circumstances, I think India is getting exposed not only in SCO, not only in BRICS, but elsewhere also. And you can see that India will probably need to struggle hard to find its true place in the Committee of Nations. As of now, I see that it is pretty confused.
Mr. Chaudhry, and now Mr. Ishaq Dar has emphasized to have more engagement or renewed engagement with Afghanistan through the SCO contact group and have a unified response towards counter-terrorism. What sort of measures could be taken from here onwards, especially keeping in light the kind of threat that emanates from the Afghan soil since the Kabul takeover by the Afghan Taliban? We've seen a resurgence of terrorism here in Pakistan. There is, of course, a threat that is felt as far as Chinese perspective is concerned, as far as the other neighboring countries' perspective is concerned. What could be the possible measures in order to impress upon the Afghan Taliban, the interim Afghan authorities, to fulfill their international obligation of not allowing the Afghan soil to be used for any terror activities by any militant group or a terrorist outfit? Firstly, on that particular front, and are there any sort of incentives or leverages which could be utilized at this particular point in time?
Just going through an article published in Dawn on the terrorism index, uh, turns out that Pakistan is the second biggest victim of terrorism, and Afghanistan's place is ninth, and India is 14th. So you can see very clearly that it's the terrorist entities in Afghanistan which have been using that space to plan and then perpetrate terrorist attacks against Pakistan. We also saw that in the latest incident of terrorism, an abhorrent incident of terrorism, which was the attack on Jafar Express, taking 450 hostages, and out of this, I think 26 passengers were even killed by the Balochistan Liberation Army. So all these people were at that time, the news was that they were being handled from Afghanistan. So naturally, Pakistan is upset with the Taliban government that they had given a solemn commitment to the United States before it withdrew that its soil will not be used for by any terrorist entities. Now we see that terrorist entities are actually taking roots in Afghanistan. So what do we do? One approach is like, India does cut off all ties with any country that it doesn't like. Pakistan doesn't do that. And I think that's the most civilized, mature way of doing things. Pakistan has opened up multiple channels with the Taliban government. Of course, there is a diplomatic channel, parliamentary channels, there are others, and then through organizations such as Shanghai Cooperation Organization that you mentioned. There is also another trilateral group, which is Pakistan, China, Afghanistan, which met recently. And that sort of became the turning point because the Chinese sort of uh, were able to persuade the Taliban government that for you it will be much better to have peaceful relations with Pakistan and don't try to play this card. And I think it appears to me that things might begin to improve a little bit after this trilateral. Because now the Taliban have also realized that they'll be much better off dealing with Pakistan in a positive way, in a constructive way, rather than uh, you know, trying to find ways to coerce Pakistan or to use these terrorist entities for what avail? It won't benefit them at all. They have been using our ports for decades. Their refugees have lived, their compatriots have lived in Pakistan for decades. So why should the Taliban do things? And I think it was because they had a wrong understanding that they were able to take over Kabul by force. That's not true. It's the US which itself had voluntarily withdrawn because the public opinion in the US wanted the governments to withdraw from distant wars. And that's why the Taliban took over. So they should not think that if they took over Kabul and they think that it is by force and therefore they can use the same kind of tactics against Pakistan, that will be counterproductive. Pakistan has taken on a much bigger enemy called India. And what are these terrorist entities? Pakistan will be able to overpower them. So it is in the longer and larger interest of the Taliban government to follow the path that China has shown, that Pakistan has consistently mentioned, that come to regional cooperation, come to bilateral cooperation, and you'll be better off. Don't play India's game. Don't make your soil available neither to India nor to other terrorist entities. And I think this message must keep getting home very, very emphatically and repeatedly so that the Taliban come to know that this is the only way that is open to them.
Right, Mr. Aizaz Ahmad Chaudhry, former Foreign Secretary of Pakistan, joining us on the video link. Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. We have been joined in the studio by another participant, Dr. Salma Malik, Foreign Affairs expert. Dr. Salma, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Let's begin with you on this very particular point where Mr. Aizaz Ahmad Chaudhry left from. When it comes to the larger interest of the Afghan people, do you think at this particular point in time, we've recently seen in the recent past, there was an informal trilateral move between Pakistan, China and Afghanistan also. Now, Mr. Ishaq has urged for a renewed engagement with. This is the policy in sheer contrast to what Indian policy has always been, cutting off. Now, Pakistan is trying to engage, urging the regional countries to engage. What are the measures at this particular point in time could be used in order to perhaps incentivize the interim Afghan authorities or impress upon them that they have got some serious obligation to fulfill?
Right. Thank you so much, Jawad, for having me in the program. It is very important not only for Pakistan to have peace in Afghanistan, but for the Afghans themselves. In case these developments happen, we have seen that these terrorists primarily are mercenaries. Whosoever is paying them the right amount, they would play to their tune. And this is what has happened in the past as well. It is very much evident, and now it is becoming all the more clear and evident, especially after the Iranian episode, that majority of terrorism and all that is being spread in the region is India based and India sponsored. And India uses this grey situation in Afghanistan to its maximum. It was doing previously as well, it is doing now as well. And these mercenaries, they're getting a lot of money. India has that type of hidden stashes that they can pay and create problems for Pakistan. And we have seen that sooner after the May conflict, the situation in Balochistan as well as KP became precarious, and Balochistan all the more so. So we have to really bring this point home to the Afghan regime or administration that as responsible international actors, they cannot remain isolated forever. I mean, there are countries, including the US, which are informally dealing with the Afghans, but there is this perk and privilege of being a responsible, full-fledged member of international community rather being the odd person out. And Pakistan provides Afghanistan with a lot of leverages. Of course, being a landlocked state, Afghanistan has its own rights that Pakistan cannot stop. But the fact is that other than that, there are the medical facilities, there is food, construction materials, so many things that which are going to Afghanistan from Pakistan. And Pakistan actually provides Afghanistan with that strategic depth That has always been talked about, that Afghanistan will be Pakistan's strategic depth. I really don't see that happening anytime in the coming decades as well. But Pakistan is the strategic depth for Afghanistan. A safe and secure Afghanistan is good for itself, it's good for the region, it is good for the development and trade and commerce for the region, and that also puts the Afghan ideological parties and the regime which is in Kabul in a very favorable light as responsible international actors who understand what their responsibilities are. So long as they keep on using this grey area, that they're no longer in our control, we haven't done anything, they cross the territory and they come to you and they bomb, they're not using our soil, and so many other things, it cannot really help the Afghan regime for the very long time.
I get your point. There are a number of other aspects related to this particular phenomenon. I like your understanding about them as well. For now, I'll have to take a quick short break, and after this particular break, we'll resume the discussion. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Views on News. In the studio, we are joined by Dr. Salma Malik and Dr. Nabeel Hussain. Before heading for the break, we were in conversation with Dr. Salma Malik as to what could be the measures that could be collectively taken in order to impress upon the Afghan authorities so that they fulfill their international obligation of not allowing the Afghan soil to be used for any terror activity. Dr. Salma, you've been repeatedly using this particular term, responsible international actor. When we try to see Afghan Taliban 2.0 in particular, after the Kabul takeover back in 2021, do you think the track record so far is actually in line with that very phenomenon of the term that you've been using, that they have actually exhibited to be one responsible international actor? Or do they have to have something more in order to prove that they are and they could be a responsible international actor in the Committee of Nations?
Jawad, I would say this is kind of a mixed bag. Some of the governance indicators within Afghanistan for the current regime are good. They have managed to bring down crime and several other things, which even was happening in the previous Taliban regime as well, but that was more of a punitive nature. This time they are more savvy, they are more suave about how they go about dealing these things. They have been exposed to international environment, the international actors, and they have been negotiating with them. We should also not forget that whenever we put this question before us that, oh, how come with so many sanctions the Afghan regime is performing? Because there are these hidden hands which are helping Afghan regime maintain its posture, because they don't really want Afghanistan to once again become a country which is in the headlines for terrorism and all that. But two countries which are suffering the most because of Afghanistan's irresponsibility, A is Pakistan and second is Iran. And we have seen in the recent past, especially after the Iran-Israel conflict, that there's been a massive exodus of Afghan nationals from Iran. So that kind of proves that there are links, and we have been in conversation with some Iranian persons and responsible people, and they have actually said that a lot of Afghan nationals were doing the type of work which was not favorable for the Iranian regime, and that is why the regime decided to push them back into Afghanistan. So at the end of the day, what Afghanistan needs to realize is that this is also a situation which is very temporary, and this cannot go on forever. And this particular breaking news that we just had about the railway link, it is a wonderful news, because that would put Pakistan, the South Asia link, direct link with Central Asia. But this can only work if there is peace and stability in Afghanistan.
And what about those hands who've been funding these terrorist and militant outfits? Is there any sort of responsibility when we try to understand the mandate, the role and the responsibilities of Financial Action Task Force? This terror financing that happens towards those militant outfits and terrorist organizations which are operating from the Afghan soil, where does that particular role and responsibility lie is there any sort of a mechanism that the FATF could come into action by itself in order to have that accountability of such actors or such elements?
Afghanistan is not on the radar of international
I mean, those who are
regimes,
funding,
so
when we talk
yes.
about there is a...
That depends on how well the countries which are suffering at the hand of those countries which are sponsoring terrorism through proxies, how well we can expose them. And Pakistan has started to do that work much more vigorously than before. Previously we would, I don't know why we would shy away from actually even taking the names, but now the gloves are off, and Pakistan should actually make a very strong point and strong case. But we also know that the country in question, India, has a lot of interest in these international bodies, and they try and they influence
What about
the
the
decisions.
recent, what about after the recent debacle?
But that's what I'm saying, that now Pakistan has to have this gloves off approach, and we need to be very clear and curt about explaining and putting it before the international community the right evidence, not mincing words, not playing diplomatically, because we have suffered a lot at the hands of the Indian regime, the saffronized regime, and this has to be in Pakistan's image has been tarnished so much by India that I think it's high time that we should absolutely put the record straight.
Right. Dr. Nabeel Hussain, when we talk about renewed engagement with Afghanistan, when we talk about the regional countries, particularly when we talk about the Chinese perspective and Pakistan's perspective towards Afghanistan. The informal moot that recently happened, the trilateral moot, China, Pakistan and Afghanistan. Of course, there was an emphasis made by the Chinese Foreign Minister, Mr. Wang Yi, for Pakistan and Afghanistan to have the renewed diplomatic relations, right? And he's also invited Afghanistan to be the part of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Now, when we talk about the Afghan Taliban had been desiring to have that international recognition to become a de jure government. Do we understand that this particular phenomenon, when there is a renewed commitment towards re-engaging with the Afghan Taliban through renewed diplomatic engagement, recognizing them as the legitimate or de jure authorities over there, could that actually work in the larger interest of the region to ensure the larger dividends in the longer run of ensuring peace, stability and security, so that these projects of wisdom and vision such as CPEC and BRI could be fulfilled?
Okay. Well, I would say that Afghanistan is to be called as the heart of Asia, the lifeline of Asia. So if, as you mentioned, that the projects like CPAC and the recent breaking news that we just had, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan and Pakistan rail ring, if we want them to practically materialize, yes, we need to have very close cooperation with Afghanistan. And as Dr. Salma has rightly pointed out, that this time the Talibans are basically 2.0 Talibans. A few months back, Talibans also had a meeting with the Education Minister of Japan, where they are discussing about more and more research and cooperation in the education sector. Similarly, what we see in the current Taliban regime, that they are also much more inclined towards having more and more business within Afghanistan, and they want to reconstruct and rebuild Afghanistan. So the previous 1996 regime and the current 2025 regime, there is a whole spectrum of difference. There's a huge generational gap that we have seen. So contemporary, what we see that if there is a vacuum, now contemporary time, what India is looking forward to have a diplomatic vacuum in Afghanistan. So if there is a diplomatic vacuum in Afghanistan, and if India fulfills that, so then it is going to be a negative thing for Pakistan. So what we need to know and what we need to do is that we need to have a more cooperative hand with the Taliban regime as well, because this time what we may see that the Talibans are also trying to have more and more cooperative and business oriented regimes. So similarly, what we see that what Ambassador has also rightly mentioned about the trilateral moot between Afghanistan, China and Pakistan. So this time China is going to be the fulcrum or the linchpin point which could create more cooperative and more negotiating terms between Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Right. Coming back to that very particular point of the disputes must be resolved through dialogue, not coercion. That is what has been emphasized by Mr. Isagdar also. Ambassador Chaudhry was also mentioning already. When we talk about, you all already mentioned your take as well, when we talk about India's membership in Shanghai Cooperation Organization, do you think its attitude and the way it has been exposed, its overtures or anything of that sort could have any sort of a negative impact on the overall function in the working of this particular regional organization?
Well, I don't see that there is going to be a negative impact on the regional organization and its functions. Rather, when Modi came to power in 2014, he was having this ambition of diplomatically isolating Pakistan. So now what we see, what happened with India at the BRICS forum and what happening with them at the regional organization and SCO forum, India is diplomatically isolating itself this time, not diplomatically isolating Pakistan. So overall, it's not going to impact the functionality of the SCO. Rather, the SCO number has now reached to 26 and Belarus have also joined. And this time the interesting thing what I noticed that Ishaq Dar has also emphasized that English should also be the language of third official language of SCO, which basically signifies that we need to have more and more countries joining in the future in the SCO, and we are going to have a very strong bloc in the east in comparison to the west.
So keeping once again, we have seen the recent aggression by India, violating the UN Charter's purposes and principles and the objectives, also breaking all the international established interstate norms and traditions. Being the member of SCO, we know for a fact when it comes to the bilateral issues between the two countries who are the member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, it is up to them to go and resolve those issues through bilateral engagement. But how do you think this particular attitude and this particular aggression in violation of the UN Charter could have actually on the overall trajectory of the bilateral relationship and subsequently their relation when they sit together at a forum of such sort, that is Shanghai Cooperation Organization?
Well, when we see that India violating the UN Charter, the Article 2.4 and the Article 2.4.1, use of force and threat of use of force, and primarily also violating the international humanitarian law and international human rights law in Kashmir by using pellet guns and using human shields, what we see that this has basically created India as a warmongering state at an international level, and what we have also seen the post-Pahalgam, where Pakistan was trying to restrain, but India was more into having more war and chaos in the region. And what we see that, for example, this particular forum, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, is more of an economic cooperation and multicultural and multilateral cooperation forum. So what we see that this particular act of aggression by India is actually creating a kind of space for India where India is becoming a more warmongering state, where more
of
aggressive
isolated
state.
in the Committee of Nations.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're short of time. Dr. Salma, I want your quick take regarding this particular important statement by Mr. Xi Jinping. He has called for joint efforts to firmly oppose hegemony, power politics and bullying in order to promote a more equal and a balanced multipolar world.
Exactly. President Xi also talked about the Shanghai spirit, and so did our Deputy Prime Minister. And this is what the SCO is all about. In 25 years of its existence, it's talked about inclusivity, shared goals, promotion, not excluding anyone, but including and becoming partners in peace, stability, cooperation, progress, development. But unfortunately, India, despite being a part of SCO, does not really believe in that. So if we need to have a common progress goal and respect for international norms as well, one point that he said was that we need to have equality of applications of norms and everything for the entire International Committee of Nations. And that is something which is very important, because what we have seen, and as Dr. Nabeel is also pointing out, that Israel and India, they are two countries which willfully violate international humanitarian laws, international laws, anything possible under the sun, and they get away with that.
So when,
this is not what should
when
be
President Xi talks about the joint efforts to firmly oppose hegemony, power politics and bullying, what could be those two primary collective efforts when
bullying
it
is
comes
something which we are absolutely seeing happening in the US, where they try and they bomb you to kingdom come and they say, oh, now we're going to have a ceasefire. So I mean, like, you know, this is really funny because you want to have the cake and eat it too. It doesn't really happen that way. And China, despite being put in
what
a corner,
could be the first step in that direction in order to counter or address that issue?
Addressing hegemony, we have seen India doing that in the region. India trying to pull its weight, trying to dissuade other countries from looking after the SARC process and all. Israel is doing in various places. Today they have bombed Syria.
An antidote to that, what's that? What could be the primary antidote to that? What could be the collective?
What could be the primary antidote? The primary antidote would be an organization which respects these norms and building a kind of a process where all the countries commit to countering hegemony and bullying and any type of violation of international norms, because if you set such a precedence, then it will continue. And China is at the moment spearheading such efforts.
Creating that process, that is of utmost importance. Dr. Salma Malik, foreign affairs expert, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Dr. Nabeel, Hussain, expert in international relations, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.